All right. As I said, welcome to the presentation. My name is Brendan. I'm the sales and marketing for Alaska and Canadian Rockies Cruise Tours. Ben was kind enough in order to set up this webinar here today as we're going to go ahead into 2018, and we've got some unique changes to Alaska Cruise Tours and certainly what we would class as unique opportunities for the UK market as well. And we've been working very hard over the past 6 months to put those resources in place for you guys to be able to utilize and market Alaska Cruise Tours as part of your broad Alaska marketing going forward for 2018. As I said, we're going to spend about 30 minutes here today, 35 minutes or so, if I can speak at a fast enough pace, which usually isn't a problem for me. And we're going to get into some of the details of Alaska Cruise Tours and how that approach is going to change for 2018. Presentations like this, always a little bit of a challenge in that there is a lot to address in so little time, and especially with a product that does have some technical minutiae attached to it. So in our 30 minutes together, I'm going to focus on four relatively specific topics, which is what is a cruise tour? Why are we or could we be relevant to the UK market? The fundamentals of how to communicate us and the UK updates, as there's been some significant changes for 2018. Now, absolutely, there is a ton more to cruise tours, and we can get into that during the Q&A session tomorrow, next week. I'm always available. Just reach out to me. For today, my hope is that there will be a buy-in, that this could be good for your business, and that to engage with cruise tours isn't as complicated as it might initially seem. So this is the southeastern coastline of Alaska, often referred to as the Inside Passage, and the itinerary is very traditional. Alaska is not a destination like Europe that has significant variations between, for example, northern and southern. In Alaska, it's Juneau, it's Skagway, it's Ketchikan. You can switch up Icy Strait Point for Sitka and have one of a few areas of scenic cruising. You may have heard of a Hubbard Glacier or Glacier Bay or Tres Chamois Fjord or any of these areas. Whether it's northbound, southbound cruise from Vancouver to Seward or vice versa, a round trip Seattle or Vancouver, whether it's Royal Caribbean or Celebrity or Holland America or Princess, this itinerary, the southeastern coastline, often known as the Inside Passage, is largely going to be the same. There are some unique destinations like Homer and Kodiak that are out there, but most of the capacity in the Alaska cruise industry is a variation of this. When we speak about our cruise tours, we use language like local and boutique to separate ourselves out from the industry standard that we refer to as Holland America and Princess. When we speak about cruise tour, the experience as over just the Alaska cruise, we use language like authentic and fuller because that's what it is. It's having a fuller and more authentic Alaska experience. The Alaska cruise is the 7 days. The nights on land are 2 to 6 days in destinations such as Seward, Denali National Park, Anchorage, and Talkeetna, or all of these fabulous places. Now, the guest can either fly into Vancouver and do a northbound sailing and then a 2 to 6 night land tour after flying home from Anchorage or Fairbanks, or alternately, they can fly into Anchorage or Fairbanks, do the 2 to 6 night land tour down to Seward, and then join the ship for a 7-night southbound cruise that takes them down to Vancouver where they'll fly home from. The important part is this. There is no availability of the guest to do the land tour separately. We package the land tour with the cruise. So it's not ancillary revenue for us. It's straight ticket revenue. If the guest books northbound, southbound cruise today, they cannot just add the land tour later on. They would need to rebook the cruise tour at prevailing rate, just as you would if you were to make a change to a cruise date. It's an accurate description to simply say that the consumer is extending out their experience in Alaska. That's an important part of why we lead with cruise tour when we're selling Alaska, because it's a fuller and more authentic experience for the guest, and it's a more profitable for us and the travel partners. I don't know how much or if you guys sell up against Holland America or Princess in the UK market, but it's good to be aware when selling Alaska that scenic areas of cruising will be foremost in the consumer's mind. There are a few, however, the ones that we focus on are Hubbard Glacier. Hubbard Glacier is on a great proportion of our itineraries, and it's certainly the scenic area of cruising that we utilize as part of the northbound, southbound cruises, which is what we're utilizing for cruise tours. The Hubbard Glacier is the largest advancing tidewater glacier in the US, which means there's more of what's called white thunder or calving. This is when the cliffs of ice collapse from the glacier into the ocean, and there's those cracks and the booms, and it's dramatic and it's spectacular. And you get more of that with Hubbard Glacier than you do with any other scenic area of cruising in Alaska or in North America. So it's a fabulous experience. You can see here the ship, the Radiance, is in what's called Disenfranchisement Bay. The captain spins the ship to get those fabulous 360-degree views of the glacier. And then we have a national park ranger on board all of the ships, on board the ship, excuse me, who's narrating that experience as they're being there. So in the consumer's mind, cruise very important in terms of those destinations. And then, of course, the scenic areas of cruising and being able to sell Hubbard Glacier, being able to speak to its strong points is very, very important as well. So before we get into the heart of things as it pertains to cruise tours, it's always good to cover the immediate resources that are available to you. Everything that is fundamentally important to the cruise tours message, the minutia that I kind of referenced before, the trains, the hotels, the tour guides, are in these three resources. And it's communicated emotively with the ultimate aim of transcending the message of our offering to something that is above the industry standard. We call it the royal difference. And it's in fact the first pages of the brochure, the first pages of the trade's website. It's referenced on the trade flyers. And I labor on this point a little because I'd like to encourage you today to let these resources do the heavy lifting for you. As you engage with your travel partners or consumers, let these be the workhorses. Hit the key points and defer them back to the resources. Excite the consumer on truly seeing Alaska in all its authenticity and glory and defer them back to the brochure. Convert the travel partner on the value of cruise tours as a phenomenal commission generator, which it is, and defer them back to the website, the trade website. And I say that because we understand and embrace that cruise tours is, in the bigger scheme of things, a relatively niche product. And our approach is not to ask you to spend more time on cruise tours than is proportionally profitable for you, but to be the support network for cruise tours that will allow you to engage your travel partners and consumers impactfully and profitably as well. So this here is the 2017, as we stand, dedicated cruise tour brochure. It's something that we create every year for the for the US market. It's a full 50-page destination brochure that's dedicated to the cruise tour experience. Now, for 2017, fairly recently, we created a UK version of this brochure for 2017 cruise tours, and it was made available to the UK market in December. We printed 10,000 of them, and then they were made available to UK agencies that have predominantly been selling Alaska in the past. They were made available to the sales teams as well, and then the call centers also. Now, the digital version of this can be viewed under the resources section of the trade website that I'm just about to speak about. And then they're also available to view under the Alaska destination section of your straight Royal Caribbean website, UK website. So it's there and it's available for the travel partner, and it's there and available for the consumer to view as well. The cruise tour business for us is right around 80% trade. And so even though this is a consumer brochure, we approach it colored from that perspective. And for that reason, the narrative of the brochure is effectively why a cruise tour over just the Alaska cruise, why us, the royal difference, and then what's in a cruise tour, the destinations, the included experiences, and so on. The daily details, which are the pages that describe the day-to-day of the cruise tour, are available for all cruise tours at the back of this brochure, and it's broken out into two sections. The first, we talk about the traveling and enjoying the included experiences, and then second paragraph of each day, we break it out and say from 8 p.m., for example, Denali is yours to discover, or from 4 p.m., Fairbanks is yours to discover, to distinctly break out the two portions of the day. We talk about the departure dates, the included experience. This brochure and all that it encompasses, especially the daily details, is the most effective way for a consumer to understand a cruise tour. We're currently working on a 2018 mini UK specific digital brochure, and that's going to be available for you prior to deployment on both the UK site and on the Trade Focused website as well. So what is that Trade Focused website? Well, it's RoyalCaribbeanCruiseTours.com. I'm going to say it once again, RoyalCaribbeanCruiseTours.com. And if I say it once again, RoyalCaribbeanCruiseTours.com, you're going to know how important I think this is for the education of the travel partners and for them to feel confident to be able to recommend and sell cruise tours to their clients. This is actually a newer site that we introduced in the US market right around October time. And it works in companion as a companion piece to the brochure, but greatly expands upon it. In December, we launched a UK dedicated version of this site. And you can see the icon in the top right-hand corner shows that it's the UK version that's being viewed. So when anyone goes to this website from the UK, there should be an IP redirect that sends them automatically to the UK version. Our aim here is to give the travel partners all of the tools they need to sell cruise tours. And this is a process for us. We really started out with communications to travel partners and our sales teams here in the US to find out really what was needed. So again, this follows the narrative of what's important, the royal difference, what differentiates us from the competition. We speak to Hubbard Glacier, the destinations, the accommodations with the links. This is all here for a travel agent to be able to review and to have easy access to the information that they need. But additionally, an important part of this is the promotion section. You're going to see there in the top right-hand corner. This is where we speak to the Alaska Cruise Tour offer, and that it also includes the trade flyer as well. Now, this is important because at times the travel partners and even the internal team members are unsure that the offer that Cruise Tour comes under. And when someone is unsure about something, they avoid selling it. In the US, we always align cruise tours with the brand offer that is being applied to Alaska. And that's certainly something we're talking to the UK about going forward. But know that on any given time, both the travel partners and the sales teams will be able to refer to the promotional section of this trade website to see as to the promotional eligibility for cruise tours in the UK market. And under the resources section as well, a lot of fabulous information for the travel partners and our internal teams to be able to utilize for cruise tours. And then I briefly mentioned the trade flyer that was available under the promotion section of the trade website. Every month, these are assets that are ready to be sent to the trade. The monthly promo or the relevant promo has been updated. The highlighted cruise tours are new, put in there by me. And we do this for a particular reason, which is that the opportunity for Alaska Cruise Tour sale lives within the interest that the consumer has for Alaska Cruise Only. But to be converted, two things have to happen. One, our Royal Alaska product broadly needs to be top of mind when the travel agent, when the travel agent's clients reach out to them about Alaska. And number two, we need the travel agent to make the connection from Royal Alaska Cruises to Royal Alaska Fabulous Cruise Tours. The intent here is not broad and it's not spectacular. The intent here is consistency. That every month, once a month, your travel partners receive this from you. So when the Alaska business walks in the door, the connection is made. And it's not really meant as a big kind of flashy campaign, but really to keep that awareness bubbling consistently throughout the year when the interest in Alaska comes in. So this is just an idea of cruise tour production. What you're seeing here is kind of 2015, 2016, 2017. On the bottom left-hand side, you'll see net APD, and on the right-hand side, you'll see pack counts. And then you can see on the left-hand column, you've got the year. So in 2015, we were right around, what were we there, 12,000 guests with an APD of 210. 11,500 guests in 2016 with an APD of 233, and then currently we're tracking for 2017 at about 11,800 guests with the APD now increasing to $279. So really we kind of tend to be in around the 12,000 guest range per year with APDs of somewhere in the 250 range, give or take, as a net APD. So roughly speaking, we're creating net ticket revenues of $18 million, give or take. Certainly, as we've approached 2016 over 2015, that's grown by over $1 million. And certainly that's looking to be the case in 2017 versus 2016, although we still have the rest of the season in order to go through. So when you look at the Alaska Cruise Tour APD over the Alaska Cruise Only APD, we're usually right around, give or take, about 20% lift over the Radiance for Alaska Cruise Only. And in the end, that's the game here. The more cruise tours we sell, the more the Radiance comes in at a higher APD, both from the cruise portion of the cruise tour and from the stabilizing effect that it has on the remaining cruise-only capacity. When we speak to net APD, we are stripping the tour portion out of the cruise tour. So we can have a like-for-like comparison between the cruise portion of the cruise tour and Alaska Cruise Only. It gives us an indication of where the profitability is. So that's why cruise tours is good for us as a company. And it would be a genuine question if the Radiance could operate profitably without it. But generally, we are salespeople here and predominantly in the field, so we're type A. So why is it good for you? This is the gross ticket revenue lift between Alaska Cruise Only and Cruise Tour. And I've just broken out some of the regions to give you an indication of this. And why have I switched from net ticket revenue to gross ticket revenue? Because the travel agents earn commission on the full bundled product. And the greater engagement that we have from the travel agent is very good for everyone's paychecks, right? So this is generally speaking about a cruise only price that we come in at based on some of the regions around $1,500 per person. And then typically speaking, when you look at the cruise tour, it's over $3,000 a person. So generally speaking, there's about 100% lift under gross ticket revenues if someone sells a cruise tour over an Alaska Cruise Only. And obviously, that's fabulous for the relationships with the travel partners who are achieving the commission off of that. And it's fabulous for the sales teams for those numbers to be going towards their regional targets. So when you take that lift that you achieve from selling a cruise tour over an Alaska Cruise Only, here in the US, this is really what this translates to. This is very broadly shows the regional cruise tour gross ticket revenue as a percentage of the overall Alaska gross ticket revenue. Again, this is trade by region. So this is what we are doing for cruise tours as a percentage of the both cruise tours and Alaska Cruise Only combined. I said before the cruise tours is a niche product in the bigger scheme of things, and that's true. But looking at it as the Alaska business overall for trade, for the regions, it's a big piece of the pie. You can see here Southeast, Northeast, right around kind of 35 to 40%. Central region is right around 40% as well. Of their overall Alaska business is Alaska Cruise Tours. And as you push west, because a concentration of the business is being sourced as a drive market from Seattle, that becomes less of a driver. And this is why we feel the UK has such significant potential for cruise tours. Your consumers have more time than the US. They are flying further than the US, and it is more likely to be once in a lifetime experience than the US. That should engender a desire to have a more complete and a more authentic experience. All we're really saying today is convert your current Alaska business into Alaska Cruise Tour business, and the uptick in GTR lift will be very beneficial for you and for your travel partners. So that's why I believe we could be relevant for you. The reality of how to communicate cruise tours to a travel agent is primarily restricted by what? Generally speaking, time. For those in field sales, you have a limited amount of times on a given sales visit. So decisions need to be made. And how much time proportionally is right for Alaska when you're speaking to it? If you're speaking about Alaska, maybe 7 to 10 minutes? So based on indexing, you really have about 4 to 5 minutes from that 10 minutes to speak about cruise tours. And the challenge is, right, that it's a little more complicated. The challenge is that there's a little less time. So having a concise pitch is very important for cruise tours. And if they understand the commission potential My suggestion as to a concise pitch should rest on three things: how we differentiate ourselves from the competition, a strong statement of direction, and ensuring that they have access and are utilizing the three resources: the brochure, the trade website, and the trade flyer. The role difference, which is what we lead with on the brochure and the trade website and the trade flyers, and a strong statement direction, is attainable in around 3 to 4 minutes or so. So I was in sales or certainly the front line of sales for 11 years on board. And I'm going to put my money where my mouth is here. And this is a typical slide for cruise tours. Talks about the overall guest satisfaction. And these sections down at the bottom, the lodges, the area, the service, and the transport, is really what we focus on when we talk about that royal difference, what makes us different for the competition. So what I'd like to ask you to do here is imagine that I'm coming in to see your travel partner and speaking about the regular product that you speak about within the UK market. And then I'm going to broach cruise tours. And this would be my pitch in about 3 to 4 minutes to your travel partners. When your clients are looking at Alaska, I highly recommend Cruise Tour, which is a combination of a 7-night Alaska cruise with a 2 to 6 night land tour. It's the more fuller and more authentic experience, and we're really proud at Royal to offer a local and a boutique experience that comes from what we call the Royal difference, which is the lodges, their area, the service, and the transport. That's what we feel drives guest satisfactions of an 8.8 out of 10. 8.8 folks who did a cruise tour with us said their experience was exceptional. And the lodges, it's key, it's an easy way to communicate it is this, which is we use the finest lodges available, locally owned and operated where we can. We'll never sacrifice using the very best lodges that are available in Alaska just by being locally owned and operated. We use the best, and then we want your clients to have those locally owned and operated experiences as well. Hotel Alyeska, the finest property between the North Pole and Seattle, absolutely amazing destination. Talkeetna is those local and boutique experiences. They're really going to have a fabulous experience staying in the properties that we partner with in the interior of Alaska. And certainly one of the key areas where we really offer that local and boutique experience is the fact that every single cruise tour is fully escorted by a local tour director, someone who comes from Alaska, someone who lives in Alaska, someone who has that deep connection with Alaska. Because if I can explain for you the traditional experience that most clients will have when they go to the interior of Alaska with other cruise lines, it's what's called a rep experience. And they'll turn up and they'll go to the hotel and they'll be met by a rep. And that rep will check the paperwork and they'll go to the check-in and they'll go to the rooms and they'll come down in the morning and there'll be a new rep. And that new rep will check their paperwork and set them on a bus, and off they go to a new destination, and there'll be some explanation along the way, but then they'll get off, and now there'll be a new rep, and the new rep will check their paperwork, and so on and so on. Now compare that with a Royal Caribbean cruise tour. Your clients will come in, and they'll go to the hotel, and they'll be met by one person, and that is their local, dedicated adventure specialist, or tour director, as we call them. And that person will introduce to you your dedicated motor coach driver. And that dedicated motor coach driver will show you their dedicated motor coach, which will be just for your small group tour experience of 45 persons, of give or take. And that's the experience that you'll have on a Royal Caribbean cruise tour. That's what makes it so unique from the industry standard. And then those luxury transportation as well. I talked about those luxury motor coaches, but every single one of our cruise tours offers a section on board the Wilderness Express, which is the luxury rail that travels to multiple destinations in the interior of Alaska. You can see here 80 persons up top, luxury leather seating, those glass roofs that give the opportunity for 360-degree views as you're trundling through Alaska. It's a fabulous experience. And down below, there's 40 persons available for white linen silver service dining, freshly prepared by a chef on the rail that day. It's a tremendous way in order to experience both the coastline and then the interior of Alaska as well. And so I really recommend that any time that you have a client that comes through the door, that you just remember three things. That a cruise tour combining the southeastern coastline of Alaska with an inland tour of Alaska is a recommendation that you should be making. that the cruise tours that Royal offers are exceptional, and that there is significant earning potential from selling an Alaska cruise tour via Alaska Cruise Only. That would be my pitch. And that was 3 minutes and 50 seconds. And that can really just be built into your Alaska presentation. That can really just be built into the sections that you speak about Alaska. And that is the way that you engage with your travel partners when you're talking about cruise tours. So, as I spoke about earlier, cruise tours lives within the upsell from Alaska Cruise Only, which is why this presentation is called the Limitless Upsell, because the base foundation already exists. Your agents are likely aware of Alaska as a destination, right? The consumer who has cruised before is likely aware of Alaska just as the destination. When a consumer wants to go to Alaska, we're not trying to sell them something new. We're trying to upsell them to a more complete experience. And that's why there's so much potential if we can achieve that traction with the trade. Having gross ticket revenues double Alaska Cruise Only is fabulous. And if your travel partners are educated as to that concise pitch that I spoke about, that's wonderful. But if they've never sold cruise tours before, if the consumer doesn't understand cruise tours, then one has to be able to frame the value. Same thing if you're in direct sales. As I said, I was on board for many, many years. Spent 5 years with the Holland America Line. I sold a lot of Alaska cruises. I sold a lot of Alaska cruise tours. And the way that I would upsell someone from an Alaska Cruise Only to an Alaska Cruise Tour is what I came to call the unspoken agenda, which is that anyone who is considering going to Alaska is inspired to go to Alaska due to a varying degree of reasons. Maybe they saw those terrible reality TV shows about gold mining in Fairbanks. Maybe they saw Northern Exposure, that funky, wonderful TV show from the 90s that's based on funky, wonderful Talkeetna. Maybe they have a friend that went there. They saw a National Geographic movie, a magazine article. It doesn't matter. Typically speaking, the things, that panacea of media and that inspires someone to want to go to Alaska is comprised by four things, which is the wilderness, whether they're talking about Denali National Park or the Chugach Mountain Range or the Kenai Peninsula. When people talk about wilderness, they're really talking about a sense of separation, being removed from it all. They're talking about wildlife, which in Alaska is typically the big five, which is the moose, the caribou, the grizzlies, the Dall sheep, and the wolves. They're talking about the mountain. And anytime anyone's talking about a mountain in Alaska, there are a lot of them, of course, the Alaska Range and the Kenai Mountains. But really what they're talking about is Mount Denali, which was formerly Mount McKinley, the tallest peak in North America, 20,000 feet and still growing. And they're talking about the glaciers as well, the scenic areas of cruising, which I spoke a little bit about before with Hubbard Glacier. Really, that panacea of media that exists out there is really about those four things. But that's an opportunity in order to speak to the client and let them know that they're not necessarily going to experience all of those things unless they do a cruise tour, unless they go into the interior of Alaska. Because if you truly want to experience wilderness, it has to be said that Juneau, Skagway, Ketchikan, prime of the summertime, 4 Holland America ships, 5 Princess ships, Royal Caribbean, Celebrity Norwegian, and everyone else, you have many thousands of people who are in those ports during the summertime in Alaska. Now, sure, you can get out for the day, but to truly experience the wilderness, you're going to have to go into the interior of Alaska. You're going to have to do a cruise tour. And if they truly want to experience wildlife, well, fortunately, there aren't bears that are marauding around Juneau on a Tuesday afternoon, right? If they truly want to experience the wildlife, they have to go to Denali National Park, which is 6 million acres of unspoiled wilderness, a wildlife refuge. They've got to go to the interior of Alaska. They got to do a cruise tour. And if they truly want to experience the mountain, well, Denali is over 377 miles from any given cruise port in Alaska. You're not going to see the mountain as part of a cruise. If you truly want to experience the mountain, then you got to do a cruise tour. You got to go into the interior of Alaska. Now, for sure, they'll have those experiences for the scenic areas of cruising out of a cruise. But those three reasons, that drove them to want to go to their travel partner in the first place and say, tell me about Alaska, they are not going to experience unless they do a cruise tour. And if the travel partner, if those indirect sales can make the consumer verbalize why they wanted to go to Alaska, it becomes very apparent very quickly that they're not going to have those fabulous experiences unless they do a cruise tour with us. And then the final point is always to point out the distances that are being traveled in order to experience the cruise tour. This is not a traditional route in order to get to Alaska, but this is certainly how I feel about flying to Vancouver or Seattle, and I'm flying from Miami, let alone flying from the UK. They're already traveling 10, 12, 13, 14 hours. If you're going to go the distance and truly experience the authentic Alaska, truly have that fully experience in the interior of Alaska. All right, we're going to finish up briefly in about 5 minutes or so in how to characterize what a cruise tour is. I think sometimes when there's that focus on the core of it, which is of course the rail and the tour guides and everything else that goes along with it, sometimes that messaging can come across as though it's some form of a bus tour, and it's not. Those core inclusions, the rail, the included experiences, and so on, are not a reason to do a cruise tour. The reason to do a cruise tour from a consumer's perspective is to experience the interior of Alaska, which is a geographically vast area in supreme comfort with unique included experiences that's balanced with time to explore on your own. So whenever I'm doing travel agent presentations that I do many, many of here in the US, whenever I'm partnering up with field sales teams to visit their travel partners and have these conversations, when I'm doing consumer presentations, I highly recommend and encourage people to think about cruise tours in three core components, which is the geographical necessity to get from A to B, the included experiences that they'll have in that time, and then the opportunity to explore on their own. I say geographical necessity to get from A to B because Alaska, the interior of Alaska, is a big place. It is 6, 7, 7.5 hours to get from Seward to Denali. It's not a bus tour. We just have to get you to Denali, and that takes time. We just have to get you to Fairbanks and Anchorage and Talkeetna and all these wonderful places, and that takes time. It's a big place. During that time, during that travel and those accommodations, there will be included experiences. And when I talk about included experiences, I break them out into two different sections to explain it to the travel partners. There are banner included experiences, which is something like a tour into Denali National Park. It can be 5, 6, 7, 8 hours long, narrated by a national park ranger going deep into the wilderness. It's a fabulous day. Same thing, for example, in Seward, the Resurrection Bay cruise, 55-mile round trip on the Kenai Peninsula, the area where the Alaskans go to play. Resurrection Bay is replete with sea lions and orcas and whales and bald eagles overhead, and it's an amazing day. These are banner included experiences, not just experiences that are there for the cruise tour. These are experiences that people literally fly in the world over in order to have. They're amazing experiences. Additionally, we have what I would refer to as additional included experiences. Now, these are still unique and local, but taking as an example the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center, it's a wildlife refuge where indigenous species are rehabilitated before they're released back out into the wild, but it's like 45 minutes long. So why do we have them? We have them because nobody wants to travel for 3 hours straight. And so these additional included experiences allow us to break up the travel throughout the day. So as part of that standard cruise tour day, there is going to be the geographical necessity to get from A to B. There is going to be some included experiences along the way to break up the travel. And then there is going to be that banner included experience that people fly in the world over to experience. And from that point, The time is on their own to explore with themselves, their friends, their families, their loved ones. They can go off and have a fabulous meal. They can do a land excursion that is available to them. It isn't with the group the entire time. And that is why on the daily details, as I referenced before, we distinctly break out the two portions of the day. The first paragraph detailing here are your included experience and travel time, and here is the time for you and your family and your loved ones to explore. All right, so what is the UK differences, 2017 versus 2018? In the past, we have limited the Alaska cruise tours because of some flight block restrictions. So the UK 2017 Alaska cruise tours, you can see that down at the bottom, were restricted to Cruise Tour 6 and Cruise Tour 8. Now, you would have seen some designations, those designations being AS and CO, basically detailing Air Sea and then cruise only. Air Sea basically meant that there was an included pre or post night in Seattle before or after the tour portion of the cruise tour, which means that if they flew into Fairbanks or Anchorage, then there would have been the pre-night in Seattle. And if they flew out of Anchorage or Fairbanks, there would have been a post-night in Seattle. CO, cruise only, basically meant that that was not there. They didn't have the pre-night in Anchorage or Fairbanks, and they did in Seattle before Anchorage or Fairbanks, and they didn't have that post-night. All of the CT always included, just as you do with a standard cruise, all the CT included the pre or post night in Seattle before the cruise portion. So if they were flying into Vancouver, of course, they would have that pre-night in Seattle. And if they were flying out of Vancouver, of course, they would have that pre-night in Seattle. But what that did is that it restricted us a little bit. And so what we were pushing to do in 2018 is standardize things a little bit more, which would allow us to offer to the UK the entire cruise tour offering. And that's what's happened. With some work from revenue management, we greatly appreciate it. We were able to restructure things. So for 2018, every single cruise tour is available for the UK market. So we went from 2 cruise tours to 11 cruise tours that are able for the UK market to book. The difference here is that none of them are going to have the pre-night in Seattle before the tour portion. If they fly into Anchorage or Fairbanks in order to start the cruise tour, right, 2 to 6 night land crew and then southbound cruise, there will not be a pre-night in Seattle. And if they do the cruise first and the tour portion afterwards, there will not be a post-night in Seattle after the tour portion. And that is because every single cruise tour that begins on Anchorage and Fairbanks has an overnight in Anchorage or Fairbanks before the tour begins the next day, included already. So typically speaking, the consumer will fly in and they have 12, 13, 14 hours in order to get to the hotel because we're not leaving that destination until around kind of 7 a.m. the next day. And then same deal on the reverse. If they're doing a northbound cruise tour and they would do the cruise first and then they would end in Anchorage or Fairbanks, there is an overnight in Anchorage or Fairbanks before the departures begin the next day. So there is ample opportunity for the clients to have that time, and that really enables us to open up the cruise tours for the UK market for 2018. It's not perfect for every single airport. For example, Dublin and some of the Irish airports, a little bit of challenges there, but broadly, there's good availability under the air block to be able to allow the UK consumer to be able to do this. And then quick one, we're going to finish up just briefly talking about Expresso, because I'm sure your travel partners will ask you, how do you book in Expresso? How do you look at cruise tours? This is just a standard UK view of Expresso, as they would look when they're booking a UK cruise. And you can see here on the start an individual reservation. Predominantly speaking, cruise tours are on the Radiance of the Seas. In fact, they're all on the Radiance of the Seas. So you can see here under the ship, I've put the Radiance, and under the destination, they would just select Alaska, and then putting their departure date, which we've used an example departure date of 2018. And this is the next screen that they would get to. Again, they're just doing the search here under the standard Alaska cruise. And you can see here, as would be brought up, is the Radiance of the Seas. on the differing dates in August and September in 2017. And you'll see that under each of the ship, it designates their cruise tour option, cruise tour option, cruise tour option. You'll note that at the top, under the left-hand side, it says Sailings 5. To the right of it, it says Cruise Tour Packages 94. So all the travel agent would need to do is select that icon that shows Cruise Tour Packages, and that would bring them to this screen here, where all of the cruise tours are detailed. Cruise Tour 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then each of those cruise tours, you can see there on the right-hand side, would have that designated pricing to go along with it. And from there, it is just a standard cruise booking. Nothing changes in terms of creating this cruise tour booking versus creating just the cruise booking in Alaska. You're going to notice here that a lot of these dates are closed off, and that's basically because currently under 2017, remember, just cruise tours 6 and 8 are open for the UK market. But as we deploy 2018, and all of these cruise tours are available for the UK market, you're going to see there that every single cruise tour will have the pricing open for the UK market and for UK travel partners to be able to book into. All right, wasn't quite 35 minutes, but I hope you don't begrudge me the extra 10 minutes. My name is Brendan Halcombe, as I said, Cruise Tour Sales and Marketing. This is my email, bhalcombe@rccl.com. I highly encourage you to take that down. As I said, I do a lot of work in here in the US with the travel partners, working with the sales teams, again, being that support network so they can comfortably and profitably and expeditiously sell cruise tours. I'm always here to be able to assist you guys in being able to do that as well. So please reach out to me. We're going to be updating these resources as we go. I'm going to be reaching out prior to deployment to let you know that the resources have been updated and made available with 2018, both for the brochures, the trade website, and everything else that goes along with it. If there are any questions, I'm not going to do this chatbot thing here because that's just for webinar presentations. But please email me, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Greatly appreciate your time today.